And welcome to All Things Conflict. Today we have got rocket fuel in the form of Courtney Teasley. So Courtney spent over 20 years in the legal system as in criminal defence, in the criminal justice system, and then realised that there is a whole education missing for people who have to find that education very quickly once they've been arrested. And so she has put her life and soul into advocacy, activism, campaigning, but also creating real world tools for people. This was a real powerhouse of a conversation, and I look forward to you hearing it. Let's jump in. Well, Courtney, how amazing to have you on All Things Conflict, and thank you for giving us your time. I came across your work. I know you're like a legal educator, you're an activist, you're out there at the grassroots helping people. I know you're in America, and I spend a lot of time in America, so that's very close to my heart. And I'd love you to just introduce yourself to the listeners.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me on All Things Conflict. I am definitely a fan and very excited to have this opportunity. And so I think you were just talking about it. You know, I've been practicing law for the last 13 years, right? And I decided to retire from practicing law after 2022 when I ran a successful campaign for one of my first lawyer clients, coaching clients that I helped start her own law practice back in the day. And we made Nashville history on seeing a judge. And so I started moving out of the practice of law. And so I had always been an educator. I had taught as an adjunct professor at a historically Black college and university here in criminal justice department. I have taught the mock trial team. I've coached lawyers, I've coached judges, now multiple judges to success on the bench. And so I believe I'm all around a legal disruptor. It's the best way to explain who I am, right? And so that's what I do down here in Nashville in the U.S. Right, in general, I have a book series after I left the practice law that I created called The Easy Way to Learn Your Rights. And it was compiled from the syllabus that I would have to, in a curriculum, I would have to create for my students back at the Black colleges or the universities that I was going to speak at. They just always taught theory, right? And they need, when Black Americans are here in the U.S. are 6 times more incarcerated, we need more than theory. We need practicality. And so that's what led me to create my book series, The Easy Way to Learn Your Rights book series, and just sort of do that coaching and consulting on one side with lawyers and judges. And I do strength coaching with other entrepreneurs over here, but on this side, to really build a legal education company that fills a need that many don't see here in America.
Wow, there's a lot to unpack there, because I loved legal disruptor. I've never heard that before, and I love that. And I feel like I want to be your best friend now. Now you really got me. You really got me going. And so what I've understood is that you know the law. You've practiced the law. You've done it for a long time. You've worked at those levels of judges and courts and all of that, and that you coach those people and you support them to be the best they can be. And then, as you said, Black people are 6 times more likely to be incarcerated. And that means that there's some kind of hole in the education of the general public who find themselves coming into contact with this system. And you're trying to fill that gap. You're saying, actually, it can't just be lots of disempowered people getting arrested, finding themselves in prison, having to learn something on the fly, and also giving their agency away to experts who might not have their best interests at heart. Let's face it.
Yeah, you get it wholeheartedly, Maria. I talk about that so much because a lot of times we'll look at the system, or people will look at the system. They're like, "Oh my God, reform the judges." Okay, so I went and did that, right? We went and put a judge in place that we feel like is better. Okay, they say, "Look at the prosecutors." Yes, we're looking at the prosecutors. We're trying to hold them accountable. We're demanding transparency, but we often forget about that advocate that is supposed to be working for the best interest of the client, the criminal defense attorney, the public defender, whoever. And what do you do if your last line of defense is working against you? If they're complicit, right? So you get it totally. That's it in a nutshell.
And I think what stands out, and the example that comes to mind, because there was a Netflix program on it, was the Central Park. Were they Central? I can't. Sorry,
Yeah.
Central Park 5, 6, 7. Yeah, the Central Park 5 is a really, really good example that anybody that doesn't know what we're talking about can just go on Netflix and watch that and say, that's not unusual.
Absolutely. Let me give you another one that I'm using. I use as a case study in a lot of my advocacy training. It's on Netflix as well. It is the Khalif Browder story. Khalif, Khalif, Browder, Browder story. That's on Netflix as well. It's a young man in New York, in the Bronx, who had been suspected of doing something, and he actually hadn't done anything, but he talked to the police. They decided, oh, yeah, you're the one who did it. They throw him in jail. He sits in jail for over 2 years without a hearing.
Without a hearing.
Without anything. The district attorney's always out of town. They're always doing something. They're continuing the case. Nobody is there demanding, hey, y'all due process. You can't keep this man locked up. Nobody's there on his behalf doing that. There's a gap that needs to be filled there, which is why I do the training. But this man spent all this time in jail. He was a lot in solitary confinement. He comes out after they dismiss the case, and he's trying to be an advocate, but he's messed up in his mind. And finally, he commits suicide after all that time being in Rikers Island. And so this is the criminal justice system here in America. Has so many gaps, so many holes, so much probable cause and deference given to whether it be an officer, right? And they get basic training, and you're not looking into their biases or whatever they have going on with themselves. And so they have all this discretion to just funnel people straight into the system. And once you get into the system, it's so hard to get out of it, right? So yeah, that's the issue here, and why I created my company to directly fight back against it.
Well, I'll tell you a story now, because I did quite a lot of work in Long Island several years ago, and there was one of very few black police officers who was giving a talk to black community, and he said, don't blame me for taking a job where the starting pay is 100,000 so I can educate my kids, right? He said, what I want you to do is look at your community, look at how you're acting, because he said one officer can make an entire career out of 3 of you.
Wow. I've never heard it put like that. Wow.
That was really sobering.
That is very sobering. Wow. They're making an entire, I got to make a note of that. That is huge. I've never heard it put like that. And that's true. It's absolutely true, right? And especially when you start looking into the overtime that they get, we start looking into the commendation medals that they're receiving for some of the things they're doing. That is all, again, based off of probable cause, which is just merely probably. It's not any real evidence back behind it. It's not been challenged. It's nothing. It's just this person saying, oh, this is what happened. So now, I'm richer. We're decorated, heavily decorated. Everyone loves me. And, that criminal. Don't worry about whether this is true or not. Let them sit and rot in jail, right? Yeah.
But on the other side of that, a really good example is, if you come across, I just watch it on YouTube, Judge Fleisher in Texas.
Why does that sound so familiar? What is going on with that, Judge?
So he's always on the whole probable cause thing. He won't have it, and he'll say things. There'll be videos of him going, "What? He's being accused of walking around while black now." I mean, he really.
The guy with the glasses, guy with the glasses.
Yeah.
Yes, I posted him on my page. I want to say we just had special judicial election going on. I was doing some consulting with some judges, and so I started doing education around it. And I saw him pop out, and he was one of the ones I posted. That's why their name sounds so familiar. I love him.
Yeah.
I love him.
He takes such a human approach to his job, you know.
Yeah,
and I think that there's something in what you're doing, which is you've gone, no, there's a humanity here that we're missing. To you know, you can't just push people through sausage factories of systems.
Wow. You cannot just push people through a sausage factory of systems. That is exactly what is going on.
And that's what's going on. So you've got all these bewildered people who they don't really have much of an idea of what's happening to them. But because they come from a minority community, you know, that's traditionally been oppressed, there's no empowerment, and you're scared to stand up to it because it can punish you even harder.
Yes. Oh my God! Like, it's just refreshing to speak to people who understand, right? Who actually.
I've really seen it. I can't. I mean, I come from a very sort of poor, downtrodden background myself, but and I've seen a lot of violence, and I've seen a lot of, you know, what happens when you are, you know, oppressed. But I've lived alongside, and I think a lot of my work is, you know, driven by, I don't want what I saw and what happened to me to happen to other people. So, and you sound similar, like educate yourself and then bring that education to the people.
Absolutely. And when we think about that, like what I found, Jess, I call it the missing curriculum. And
I love that. The missing curriculum.
The missing curriculum. And it is literally after doing all the stuff that I told you as a legal disruptor, I found that people from what I like to call the DAM community, and that's DAMM, the disproportionately affected, marginalized minority communities, they are undereducated grossly in financial literacy, legal literacy, and civics. And so think about it. And especially, I mean, here in America, you're going to teach me that ignorance of the law is no excuse for breaking the law, but you never taught me the law.
Never taught me what it was.
What the law is. Civics. You don't say much outside of, you need to vote. You don't tell me about agency. You don't tell me about the power I have as a citizen. You don't tell me about how I can hold people accountable. You don't tell me about any of the opportunities I can actually have to live fully and fruitfully as a citizen. And then finally, financial literacy. You keep me broke and impoverished. You keep me in these bare minimum jobs, right? And so these three things continue cycles of poverty. It continues people basically just not living in a bubble, right? And so, of course, they're getting wrapped up into the criminal justice system over and over and over. Of course, even if they're the Central Park Five, right? Khalid Brown or didn't do it, you don't know legal literacy enough to even recognize that. I had to go down there and talk to that cop. And I should not have done that, right? And so that's the missing curriculum. What I've been trying to bridge that gap in not only schools, universities, but churches, right? Where back here in America, that is exactly where the heart of our civil rights movement was born in our churches. And so a lot of our churches have taken on to, focusing on other things like maybe, hunger or, homelessness. Right. And that's cool and nice. But, hey, we're most disproportionately impacted in another area. You could have a lot of help there.
Yeah, totally. And, just to drive home the point about people that are oppressed and are disproportionately affected, I sat, and this was probably One of the most, I sit with a lot of people who've been through a lot of stuff, and this was probably one of the hardest things I ever heard. And this was a woman who was a black woman who was having a chat with a 7 or 8 year old son. They were just having fun, and she asked her son if he had a superpower, what would he want it to be? And he turned round and said, I wish I had the power to turn white when I see a police officer. I mean, that has to be the most heartbreaking thing to hear out of a child's mouth.
Wow. I mean, that would break you. That breaks you,
that
right?
Breaks you, yeah.
Like if I heard
it's
my
like,
son,
where do you go from there? Like, what have we fucked up so badly that's how a child sees the world?
A 7 or 8-year-old is able to see the world in that manner. And so when I think of that, like, then we think about the Tamir Rices here in America that, young boy just playing in the park. He's clearly a child, right? Shot down, shot because he looks like a threat to someone, or he had a gun. It was a toy gun. It was clearly a toy gun. But I have a 10-year-old son. So that really, really,
that's a stab, isn't it? It's like that.
Stabs me. And I have these conversations with him, and it's like, it's not fair almost. Like, we can't just have fun, right? We have to have fun and talk, but then we also got to prepare you for the inevitable or what is most likely to occur due to these statistics. Yeah, I hate that.
Yeah, so there's a lot here,
Yeah.
To do what you're doing, there is a lot of heartbreak, isn't there? There is a lot of heartbreak.
Absolutely.
And I guess some of that fuels you, I guess that some of that drives some anger, and what you're doing is channeling that anger into something useful, making a contribution.
Absolutely. That's exactly what I did. I was practicing for so long, right? And I was just seeing this stuff day in and day out. And now that I'm like on the accountability side and coaching lawyers, and I go to court, when I go, I'm like, what the heck? Like, it's just be a random day and a judge will say or do something, or a lawyer do something. I'm like, this is not okay. Like, why is nobody saying anything about this? Because you become desensitized, right? You're desensitized when you're practicing in it daily, when you're just doing that. That's your job, and I'm about to go do a speaking engagement today. So I'm in another city, and I'm like, literally going to talk to them about these things. Like, you got to bury that judgment, spare the judgment. Don't start with the judgment. So that I created a framework around this. MFN, mindset, finesse, non-negotiable boundaries. And the biggest thing is your mindset, right? Moving from a mindset of stereotypes, a mindset of, that person had to have done it. Using your experience, right, which is great, but your experience causes you to recognize patterns. And then sometimes those patterns become judgments of people, even if they didn't do it. So it's so deep, right? It is mental. So not only learning how to help them revisit a different mindset process of it, then giving them tools that they can do moving forward, and then boundaries that they have to stand on. So it's a job. It's a job. It's not that easy to do, if I'm just being honest.
So what drives you then? What is it that keeps you going?
I love that you asked me that. What drives me is I am from the damn community, like you were saying, right? From a community, a disproportionately affected, marginalized minority community. I literally saw how these things transpired. I saw them in real time, right? Not just learned about them. When I was in school, I saw them. I saw how it worked, right? That cops would, do whatever they wanted and get in court and then say it was something else, right? And so I have friends, I have people who, when I first started my law practice, I started representing. And so I started seeing them taken advantage of just by being undereducated in this process, right? And citizens, they should understand. So I saw that. And then that is what actually pushed me to say, you know what? I need to fight for them, right? They don't have the tools. They maybe couldn't afford to go to law school, but I need to fight for them. They need a voice. They need someone who's unafraid, someone who's willing to speak truth to power. So that's what drives me. It's the people that I know would never speak up for themselves. solely because they were undereducated in these areas. I'm not undereducated in these areas. I had to go educate myself in these areas. And so because I know maybe they don't have the same resources I had, even being from the damn community, there are different levels of it, right? I could be more privileged than someone else. So I'm going to use my privilege in the best way. And I'm going to go educate the community.
So when I hear you say what drives you, there are some real similarities between us, and I recognise you, I recognise what that is. And so I think if I've understood when I've researched you coming on the show and all the rest of it, I think you've actually got like practical, you're not just this activist making a lot of noise. You've actually developed real practical tools, haven't you? And at the end of the day, we can be outraged and we can speak truth to power and we can do all of those things, and that's all needed. But then we still have to be able to give people tangible things. So can you talk us through what you've actually done, like that people could get their hands on?
Yes, I love that question, Maria, because my number one strength, so I'm also a Gallup Clifton Strength certified coach. And so I'm big on strengths. I love it so much. My number one strength is activator. So I can only talk about things for so long. And before I have to, let's do something.
Absolutely, yes.
And so I created, immediately I came out and I was like, I got to get this stuff out of my head, what I want to teach people. So that's the book series, right? Book 1 is on the Fourth Amendment. The easy way is called Disrupt the Criminal Justice System of Oppression, the Easy Way to Learn Your Rights. And that is, so that's a full title, but the easy way to learn your rights is way easier to remember and follow. And so Book 1 is the Fourth Amendment. That one is just breaking down the Fourth Amendment. Very easy, very no legalese. Very, the Fourth Amendment is not very long. So that one's shorter and to the point. The second book is the Fifth Amendment. Now that one is packed because the Fifth Amendment is packed full of all these protections here. And so I know when I was speaking with people with your show, I was telling them, like, with all these people coming over here for the FIFA Cup and the police being as pro-arrest as they are, people need to be able to understand the magic words to say. They need to understand their rights really quickly, right? And so that's why I created the book series. But secondly, I created an advocacy training, a damn advocacy training of disproportionately affected, marginalized minority. Yes. Now that is where the rubber hit the road with some of my nonprofits here in Nashville. I started off training them. Now I did the easy way to learn your rights training. Like I gave them a training of legal literacy, but we went so deep into ways to advocate after I fought this big public case here to free children who have been forced into foster care. So I pulled back the veil of the criminal defense area of a criminal justice realm that's always intentionally complicated. And I show them what they're looking for in judges and district attorneys and their clients and things that are being said and not being said. So I really give them a really deep learning. And then I use Khalid Browder as the case study to show them now how to use their organization to be proactive instead of reactive. That's proactive, meaning helping someone prior to them becoming a felon, prior to them pleading guilty, versus all of the people who want to help afterwards, right? With the treatment. Cool. So I teach them how to do that in real time. Like, what could you have done for Khalid Browder, right? Could you have organized a court watch team in the community to be there at each of his court dates and then did a whole press release around the fact that he had been there maybe, at the first 5 to 10 damn times. Sorry, I apologize. But the 5 to 10 times, couldn't you have done something at that time frame for that young man to advocate on behalf of him when he himself didn't have the tools, nor his family? So that's the damn advocacy training. And so those things, the easy way to learn your rights book, the damn advocacy training, and then I just released a journal. So it's called a Fight Your Case journal, that when you're fighting a case in real time, it helps you outline everything you need and be able to keep your lawyer in check, to know what to do when your lawyer is getting out of check, to demand the things you need of your lawyer, so to basically document your case fully. So that way, if you're not successful at this level, you're setting yourself up for a great appeal.
I think that's amazing. And what I really liked about it was also thinking the advocacy part and thinking about, one person on their own, even knowing everything and even whatever, could still get crushed. But one person on their own, surrounded by their community, who's going to say, actually, we're going to be out there, we're going to be standing outside the court, we're going to be taking a note of everything, we're going to look into the backgrounds of all these judges and all the rest of it, and we're going to bring this out. That's the magic ingredient, is because you see, in our society, we've liked to individualize everything.
Yeah.
Right. And that stops us from forming the kinds of supportive, empathic groups that we need around us to ensure that there's what's the word? Scrutiny.
Yeah. As accountability. We need that. And I love it because what you're saying is one thing that I took from, and I'm a big history buff when it comes to looking at African American history, right, from slavery, right? And so when we think about these things, that is how, when the civil rights movement, they were showing when they were going over the Selma Bridge, they knew they were going to get beat down. They knew that governor was temperamental. They knew he was racist. They knew he was going to do everything he did, and they needed it to happen so it could be caught on camera, so that way the world could see in real time what they are doing to the disproportionately affected marginalized minority. And so that's what we do when we stop individualizing everything, like you said. When we start coming together and we're all there holding accountable, and now it's even easier. We pull up our phones and we go live. Hey, I'm here at this county courthouse, and they got this boy locked up for 2 years. And he has it. So these are the things that we have to start doing in real time to show the rest of the world what's being done to people in these small counties, these small cities over here in America, right?
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I'm reminded of in the UK, there's a lady who became a very dear friend of mine, and she's succumbed to Alzheimer's now, unfortunately. But she was one of the founders of the Black Panthers in the UK. And there's a case you might want to actually look at. It was called the Mangrove Nine. And we're going back 50 years, actually more than 50 years now. It's had its 50-year anniversary. And it was a group of black people in a restaurant, and they get arrested, and they're just trying to say, no, we can't keep having this. And then they get done for rioting, or they weren't rioting, it was just protesting. And eventually, my friend, whose name's Althea, they've all got these judges, this legal representation, but she actually looks at the barrister and says, "You might be the best barrister in the world, but you're white. You can't defend me." And she defends herself. And what they do is they look at the jury, and the jury is all white. And they say, but the law says it has to be 12 people who are our peers.
Yes.
And her and that group, they made a huge amount of change. And it's what you do with the power of group.
Yeah.
It's worth looking into. Look into the Mangrove Nine.
Absolutely will. Like, I'm going on my second Euro tour coming up in August, but we went 2 years ago. We came to London to come basically learn about the oppression of the people over there. And we went to, the Carnival, Notting Hill Carnival. And so still in a journey of that, I would love to learn about the Mangrove Nine.
Oh, I'll make sure, because there's actually, the BBC made a play about it. So I'll send you a link so you can have a look at it.
That. And listen, if anything's going on over there, because I'm a believer that I like to see how other people are disrupting, how other people fight, because we can always use pieces, tools to bring back for our own fight. So if anything's going on over there in the UK that's along these lines, please invite me. I'd love to be there.
Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah. Well, listen, I mean, we're coming to the end of our time together. you're a force of nature, Courtney. You are a force of nature. There's so many similarities between us. I really hope this is just the first of many conversations and perhaps even collaborations.
Oh, yes.
I really do. You inspire me, and I'd love to continue this in some form or other, because we haven't even scratched the surface yet.
No, we have not. We are kindred spirits, you know, sisters in this fight, and it's hard to find us. And so when you said something, you said it to me, and I latched on to it. You said, I recognize you. And it feels good to be recognized. So the collaborations, I welcome all of them. Thank you so much for having me, Maria.
Thank you. Lots of love to you. Speak soon.